On the left, we have a stock BMW E31 850i open diff with 293 ratio, and on the right, E32 750 limited slip differential with 315 ratio that we'll be using in Project Marseille. As we're restoring the E31 completely, this LSD needs to be overhauled as well. As one needs specialty tools, parts, and knowledge to do that properly, we are visiting Florian from limitedslip.de. Just a note, this isn't sponsored content, I'm a paying customer, and I simply asked Florian if he'd be willing to appear in the video and show us what it takes to properly rebuild a differential. Florian has been rebuilding BMW diffs for 14 years and is regarded as the best diff builder in the community. He is also a racing and drift instructor, so he can not only build the LSDs but also use them properly.
So we have to drain it now and then wait, because now everything is full of oil and I can see the wear pattern. I will put some Tuschierpaste on some piece, turn it through, and then check the wear pattern.
I like it. I love when I walk into an organized workshop. You know? That's when you know you're at the right place.
This is the advantage of small space. I have to keep it organized, because if not, everything.
It doesn't make sense if you spend half an hour looking for a socket or a tool.
Yeah, exactly. I also prefer to, or check to do it otherwise, use gear sets only if they're still installed, because then I can check if they're okay, what I'll show you later. And if you just hand me over the ratio, the final drive gear set as a used part, I can check if it's in good condition, and I will only see it after I completely assembled and measured everything. And when I then see it's not okay, all the work was for nothing. These are the measuring tools to measure the depth of the pinion. Okay. So I installed a pinion and put it up, and then put it on the shim on the pinion, and then measure through here, measure down how deep it is. And then I have or I can correct with these kind of shims. This is one point that makes it hard for you to make it yourself, because first of all, you don't have these tools. And the black one, the 210 one, luckily, is an original BMW tool, and all the others I have machined myself, or had the machine for me, because they were no more available, unfortunately. I'm only doing BMW differentials. I'm doing LSDs for all cars, but the whole pumpkins, only BMW rear axles, because you need so much special tools, special shims to make it perfectly, and this is what I want. In theory, I can do any rear axle differential, because if it's a BMW, a Mercedes, whatever, it's the same concept, you know, it's the same way to set it up, but the shims are different, the measuring tools are different, and this makes it complex for one person.
Interesting. Because this is the question that I wanted to ask you. Like, is it possible for me to actually rebuild the diff without the special tools and stuff that you have here?
Depends on what you mean with rebuilding an LSD.
So what I've done on my E46 M3, for example, I didn't do the bearings. I just took it apart and replaced the clutch discs inside and put it back together.
And this is what you can easily do. I guess we're also rebuilding the LSD here. And what I'm doing then is I write down what exact discs I installed in Europe. Because these discs are available in different sizes to set the assembly clearance. And I'm writing this down. And if you call me in 5 years and say, I want to rebuild it, then I can send you a perfectly fitting set of clutches, and you don't have to measure anything.
So you keep like archive of everything. Really cool.
Yeah. From the first differential that I built, I wrote this down. I have a list with, now I'm at a little more than 3,000 differentials and LSD cores that I built. I started 14 years ago.
Really
it escalated a bit in the last years. And doing this since I would say 5 years as my main profession. And
fantastic.
I'm happy to start it, documenting it exactly, because it was in the first I wanted to check if there are some issues, and I see, okay, these parts make problems, so I can look who has them as well. But I didn't have issues as from the beginning. I only used ZF and Draxler original parts, and these are perfect quality, and now there's a lot of aftermarket stuff that is really not so good, I would say.
Yeah, I know. I bought a kit from a company that I didn't know better at the time, but a lot of people after told me that they have like a lot of issues with parts. like the discs would disintegrate within like 1,000 kilometers or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's when I started thinking like, maybe I can't find all of this. It's maybe better to let someone like you, a professional, rebuild it, because I want it to last.
In my opinion, that's not a bad idea, and the original discs are expensive, but even the non-OEM ones are quite not quite cheap at all. So spending a certain amount of money for the original stuff really pays out in the end.
Absolutely.
And this stuff lasts long. And what interests me, besides building the whole pumpkins, is the LSD setup. And this is something that really no one in that depth is doing. Even Draxler just sell a standard setup with each LSD. So you can get a Draxler LSD, but not different setups. And setting up an LSD is really something very interesting, as you can change the car's behavior noticeably. So it really makes sense. It's like buying a good set of coilovers and just install it in the car is not a bad idea for sure, and it's better than before. This is like going with a Draxler ZF LSD. It's a great improvement. But setting this to a setup that makes sense for your car, for your kind of driving, what you want to do with the car, is even a noticeable option higher, you know.
Yeah, I understand it. Like you have to tailor it to your needs and yours.
And so this was the second reason to write it down exactly, that when I started doing these setups, I had something in mind and thought this should work. And then I tried it with my own cars and with friends' cars and so on, and always could look what exactly how did I do the setup. And so over the years I have a lot of experience with various setups and how they influence the car's behavior. What I'm no more doing, I tried this, but I was not satisfied, rebuilding the OEM diff. Because first, the Visco diff, the first problem, Visco lock, it's not a classical Visco, but it's a Visco lock, also with clutches, but the engagement is way too slow.
I know, yeah. I'm experiencing that exact same issue now in my E46.
You will never get, by far, not get the performance, the reaction of the car that you get with a classic.
When you actually want to drift the car, you can feel that it's slow to lock up, and then it unlocks too early as well.
Yeah, the whole system works with difference in wheel speeds. And you need a certain amount of difference over a certain amount of time, let's say half a second, one wheel spinning. This difference generates a pressure that's pressed on the clutches, and then it locks, but half a second too late. This is, you don't have the time on the racetrack, and it feels like an old turbo. You hit the gas, nothing happens, and then suddenly the rear end flies out. And once you lift the gas, there's no more wheel speed difference, and the pressure is released again. And this system is completely senseless in this kind of car. It would make sense if you have a SUV, or if you got stuck in the mud with your M3, you have a second of time, no problem, and then it pulls you out easily. But I don't rebuild them because it just doesn't make sense, because there are no parts out there that make sense. The system doesn't make sense, and there is a replacement that definitely makes sense and improves the driving. And I have a lot of customers that come to me with the issue of clunking or noises when turning. This is what they complain, and this is what they get rid of. Then I explained that I only switched the differential. They said yes. And afterwards they call me and say, I didn't expect it to drive that much better and that noticeably better. And that's
really always nice to hear.
That's like that. Nice to hear, exactly. And that's what, when opting for a ZF or Draxler LSD, this is what I mostly hear, because it's just a good product. It's just a good and high performing product, and set right, what can go wrong?
So the cover, I'm not going to be using this cover. Because the E31 is different. It has bushings here and here. But I still need to install the bushings and vapor blast the cover.
So you do poly bushings or?
No, stock.
Okay, that's a good idea.
I don't like poly bushings.
Me not as well, and I'm asking because a lot of people that have their diffs built here switch to harder bushings and once they're in there, and then they call me and complain about noises.
Yep, that's diff bushings.
Exactly, the noises are the diff, but every diff does make noises, and this is the main reason for the soft, more or less soft rubber.
That's the reason why OEM does it.
Exactly.
Even on my track car, I have like all solid subframe bushings, ball joints, monoballs, but for diff bushings I stayed stock. I didn't change into anything else.
This is what I recommend to everybody. Or if you don't complain about the sound, it's fine for the diff. So everybody has to decide if he can live with the noises or even likes the noises for a race car, for example, or if not, and then stay OEM.
So it is an LSD, huh?
Yeah, the good news is there's indeed an LSD inside. On most OEM LSDs, you can try to rotate the two side axles against each other, and if you can't, it tends to be an LSD. But if it's a welded, for example, a drifter diff that he weld the open one, you also can't.
You also feel it, yeah.
But how you can say it 100% when buying a diff, you just pull these out or one of them, and then look inside here, and you see, or on the other side, you see a cross in the middle.
Yes.
If it's an open diff, it would be one diagonal.
So it's
axle.
not gonna have the cross.
So what we're doing now is checking the
wear
backlash
pattern.
and the wear pattern.
Special paint or just paste or?
It's a Tuschierpaste in Germany. In German, I don't know the. So before turning it through, we check the backlash. And it's a bit over 0.1 of a millimeter, and that's fine. It's 10 plus minus 4. So for a used one, it's normally 10 or a bit more, but this is well within spec.
Yeah, it's around 10. Okay.
So this one must be, that doesn't have to rotate. And this one, you have to, and then you see what the teeth actually have backlash. The reason why the backlash is required is when you're driving, this gets warm or even hot, and when metal is getting hot, it spans a bit. And if it would have no backlash, the teeth would
just melt itself.
Yeah,
eat itself,
exactly. Yeah. And a lot of people, when they touch their new diff and they back and forth, you hear the clunking and they get frightened. But this is the reason for it. And once the oil is in and we spin it around, the oil softens this clunking noise.
And how do you adjust now? Say this was out of spec right now. So how would you adjust it?
You can set this with these shims. Here's a shim, and over there is a shim. The total thickness of the shims defines the friction, the dynamic friction of the bearings, of the side bearings. So this is what you set first, without pinion or without ring gear. And once this is set, you have the total measurement of both. Or you have here a shim and here a shim. If you have too much backlash, then took a thinner shim here, took the same size thicker, so minus 10 here, plus 10 here. So the total thickness is the same, and you shift it in this direction. And this is the second...
that you pointed out. That's not something that I could do, I guess, because I don't have spare shims.
Exactly. This is the problem that you have then. You can... measuring backlash is easy. Yeah. Setting is difficult if you don't have the shims. It's easy if you have the shims.
Yeah.
Okay, and now we see the...
So that's...
From this side.
So this on the inner edge, that's the wear pattern.
This is where the color is away, the teeth touched or meshed, and so if it's dark in the middle, it's fine. And this is the coast side, and we can look here on the power side.
Would you say
it's not so good to see, but it's you can see here on the upper part that the color is still there. So
it's not ideal, huh?
It's not as perfect as with a new gear set. So if we would have a new gear set here, and I said it correctly, it's a perfect wear pattern. This is a used one. It's used, but it's far from worn out or so. It's still
normal used diff.
Not on the outer edge or so. It's a normal used diff with an okay gear set, and these 210 millimeter diffs and gear sets and LSD cores, they are rock solid. They're
robust,
very robust.
Yeah, maybe I wouldn't even do this, but since I'm restoring the entire car, I really want everything to be brand new and perfect. So that's why I'm
rebuilding the LSD definitely makes sense after 200,000 kilometers or so. Rebuilding the clutches. If it doesn't have to be perfect, you can definitely drive these diffs until they make noises, until they start making noises. So, for example, this is a bearing race that starts to fail.
Ah, okay.
You have these pittings here.
Yeah. So let's put it there. Ooh,
this is a lot more
heavy
with the bearing itself. Also here you see the pittings.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's sharp.
When the bearings start to fail, it starts to make noises, more noises. And as you can imagine, these noises are getting more and more and more as more breaks out, and then you have to rebuild. But as long as it runs quiet and smooth, you can just drive it. From the LSD perspective, if the locking is no more good, so for example, if you accelerate out of a tight corner, second gear, hit the gas, and the inner wheel spins, then it's also time for rebuild.
Yeah,
but
slipping.
For a 30, 40-year-old differential, I would definitely always switch the plates. And,
just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
Another question that's potentially interesting is, say on E39 M5, a big thing is for people to use these friction modifiers in the diffs they use from the factory.
That's an interesting topic. If you have a clutch type LSD, like the old ZF units, like in E39 M5, and also E46 M3 with the Viscolock, which also has clutches, you need a certain amount of friction modifier in the oil. BMW says you should use a certain oil, and this oil already has
ridiculously expensive, but
exactly, and it already has friction modifier in it in a certain amount, and this is fine for driving and for performance and for the clutches and so on. You can maybe think of some kind of soap or kind of a bit of soap, and then these clutches can move as they are intended to. They don't glue together too much, and they also don't slide too easy. It's just the right amount to deliver the LSD performance that is wanted. Or some people are then complaining, they do tight corners with cold oil and so on, and they hear a certain amount of noise, and they want to get rid of this. And then the easiest thing that you can do is just put more friction modifier, more soap, and then it slides easier. But you lose a certain amount of bite and performance and lockup capabilities, but you have less noises. So just putting in a lot of friction modifier makes the noises when turning go away. Straight line noises are this problem. They're not solved then. But in tight turns you get less noises, but you don't have the performance.
So what do you
anymore.
then recommend, for example, for this diff, for new?
For this diff, I'll recommend
BMW oil or.
No, you don't have to use the BMW oil. It was Castrol. I don't know what's now for the differential. Maybe it's still Castrol.
Is there a certain orientation that this flange goes in? Because I know on the Visco diff, I saw in the TIS that it said that you have to put it in the.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
I can show you. This one is mounted correctly.
Okay.
And you see it because here is this
smaller
hole is
one.
smaller. Yeah. And this one, so it was open already. If you look here. This one is 1 too far in the back. So
incorrect.
This was already removed. So if you have an older diff like this one, it's on 12 o'clock. If you have a newer like E46 M3, they rotated it one back. So the reason is there's a hole. I can
so
show
for
you.
the oil, I think.
Exactly, and when it's at 12 o'clock or even a bit backwards, the oil comes in there. And if it's at 6 o'clock, the oil can flow up. So here you are. And this was mounted like this, and this is wrong because the oil comes this way, so it must be like this, or even like this. Yeah. And this is also one of the things, if you look at it, you don't see it. If you know what you're looking for, you immediately see how to rotate it.
Gotcha, So sometimes it can be a bit, you gotta push it out like that.
Sometimes it's a bit hard to move it out because of rust or because of the O-ring. It's
the heart can come out.
Yeah, that's it more or less.
And
if you want to rebuild LSD, you have to do exactly these steps. Now we have it out, and you can open the cover here, replace the discs, screw the cover down, and just put it back in with the right side to the right, the left side to the left again, and then nothing has changed concerning the backlash.
So this is what I've done with my E46 M3 when I did it. So kept everything in order of shims, of the covers and everything. Just did the discs on the inside.
Removing this bearing is pretty hard because with a 2-arm puller you have no space here. So I have a very, very special tool. Looking like this.
Okay.
Yeah, it costs a crazy amount of money, but it's such a great tool that I daily use and makes it so much more easy.
Oh, that is a nice tool.
That's a really, really perfect tool. And makes it so much easier.
Yeah, that comes off super easily.
And this is what we got then.
Nice.
That's just perfect. And now it already comes up a bit because of the preload. There are 2 preload springs inside and they lift the cover. So now we're curious on what comes out here. The first shim is always glued to the cover. Okay, this one looks definitely good. No complaints here about the pressure ring. You see here that it starts to lose the surface and starts to grind there. But if you go over with your fingernail, you will feel no. Do you feel anything?
I would say maybe minimal, almost nothing.
Yeah.
But you can feel something a little bit.
We can change this to be on the absolute safe side, but even with this one, it would be okay.
Fine, yeah.
A non-okay one would be this one. This is a pressure ring that definitely failed and has to be replaced.
Yeah, heavy grooves, heavy pitting.
The gearing itself is super robust, super tough. Never any complaints with this one or problems. As long as it's untouched. So if you do the assembly wrong, you can break everything, of course.
Yeah.
But if it's an OEM untouched differential, the worst thing that can happen at a 210 LSD is that these also have.
This one is good as well.
Yeah. These are the clutches, so one clutch pack, inner clutch disc with the moly coating, and you see the darker color between the teeth, and it's getting lighter out there, and this is the wear, because within the teeth there is no friction, of course. So this is like they were originally, and whatever is lighter now is the wear. So this definitely still locked, but not 25%, but let's say 15% or whatever. So once it wears, the lockup goes down and down and down.
So yeah, I think you asked me, do you want to do 25 or 45?
Yeah.
So we're gonna go 45.
Yeah, I'll show you the difference or how it is done. We have to remove the bearing here.
Yet another bearing.
And therefore we need to remove the speedo.
Yeah. I know exactly how you feel about that tool. It's when you buy a tool that's really good and it works, you just love it. Brilliant tool.
Now we can remove these ones. And once we have cleaned this is the LSD case is as good as new. This is no wear part, as you can imagine here.
Yeah.
So you don't have any downside when reusing them. So what we are doing now is cleaning everything up and then replacing the clutches. And now we're at the setup and the difference between 25 and 45%. So these are the same pressure rings that you have, and these are the new clutches. And what you have, or what you have had, is this kind of setup with 2 cup springs for the preload. And this is 25%. It's 45-degree ramp on power, 45-degree on coast. So it's so-called two-way LSD. It locks on power, and also if you lift the gas, for example, when you're drifting, you want to keep the lockup still there. And this is defined as 25% lockup. And what we can do now is use a bit thinner clutches, a thinner cup spring, because if we keep the thick cup spring, it's a problem with the space, but even more with a too high preload then. Because if you double the surfaces, you double the preload, and then the preload is too high, and then if you're doing tight turns, it's too much, or it's noisy. And if you're driving fast on the street or even on the racetrack, in the apex of the corner, the car tend to understeer because the preload is always there.
It's gonna push the car in.
Yeah, and if you want 45%, so nearly double of the lockup, we use, as I said, the thinner clutches, modify some parts to get this fitted, use special thinner cup spring, And then this is the difference. And the good thing is the reaction of the LSD, this is what the reaction makes. The ramp angle stays like OEM, so smooth and quick. And the higher lockup is done via the additional clutch surfaces. So it's the same pressure like before, but on double the amount of clutches that rotate. So it doesn't only lock higher, has the same reaction, and it's longer lasting. An alternative would be this one. What's often done in the internet builds or in the eBay shops, they use, these are original units with the that's a worst case scenario, for example. So first of all, they widen these ones. You see it's a double V.
Yeah.
And the axle just flipping over this edge. So this is completely senseless or doesn't make sense, and this is no more defined. You don't know what this exactly does. So definitely not good. If you machine it further, then the pressure rings are too close together and the gearing doesn't have enough space. So this is also not possible. So what is also done is they machine in between, they machine additional ramps with a more shallow angle. And this means with the same input torque, power or coast, you get more pressure on the clutches. So for example, this one with one clutch pack on each side is 40%. The 40% is not worse compared to the 45 because of the 5% difference, but because of you have more force on few clutches, so it wears more, it reacts harder, more aggressive, and this is not a good idea. And even
not as refined,
even if it's just machined wrong plus used clutches, for example, then it's a 40%, but still doesn't work and drive as it should.
Perfect solution to keep the normal drivability and refinement.
It's a very good solution. Let's say it like this. Perfect, it's not. The point with the ZF LSD core, to show you this as well. This is a ZF LSD. I just made it nice, but it's a used core. And this is a Draxler core. That's also for the 210mm differential. You can see that it's machined. It's more machined to save some additional weight, so it's a little lighter.
Definitely tell that. Both here, this here.
Exactly, and you have a better oil flow due to the bigger holes here, so the oil circulation is better. But these are just minor improvements that you won't actually notice or feel. The main difference is you have more space inside. And more space inside means you can even install more clutches. And this makes it interesting. But even if you machine this one further, you're still limited to these axle bevel gears. And they also don't fit more clutches. This is the one clutch that was inside. A second clutch has enough space, but a third or fourth won't fit there. And this is the Draxler axle bevel gear, and you have a lot of more space available in the core and on the axle bevel gear. And here you can fit up to 8 clutch packs in total.
Really nice. So if you want to go crazy.
Yeah, and coming back to the word perfect, if you want the perfect 45%, you make the ramps even steeper and use 8 instead of 4 clutch packs, and use the drilled clutches instead of the solid clutches for a better oil circulation in between the clutches. So there is still room for improvement, or you can make this even better, but a ZF 45% unit is 90% perfect.
Yeah,
and
especially
if you want,
for a road car.
For a road car, exactly. And if you want to be, it's still not cheap in the meanwhile. It's also expensive, but this is quite a lot more expensive. So for a dedicated track car or for a real serious build, I definitely suggest the Draxler with all the advantages it has. But for a spirited driven road car, even some track days and so on, the 45 ZF is a great unit. Let's say this is the GT3 and this is the RS.
Nice. Good comparison, yeah.
Here are the pressure ring options that I have with Draxler pressure rings. The difference is always is just the ramp angle. So each has a certain ramp angle, and with this I can set not only the two-way setup, but I can have a steeper and a more shallow angle, for example, to have more lockup on power, less on coast, and so on, depending on what the car, the driver, or the use case requires. But to keep it on a reasonable level of cost. If you have a ZF base diff, you have the 45 two-way ramps, what are really good ramps, that makes sense for a sporty street car. And so it's the most cost-effective, still very good setup to just upgrade the clutches to 4 clutch packs, leave it as it is, and you have, for a reasonable amount of money, you have 90% of the Draxler performance.
So now you're going to remove the pinion gear, or?
Yeah, but before I remove, I want to know how it's set, how the depth is set now from factory, because there is the correct value is engraved, as I show you later on, and I want to check if it's still fine.
Okay, so this is a special tool.
This is a special tool, yeah, the measuring bridge and the shim that's required, and you put it just on the pinion. Put this in here, and then you rotate a bit back and forth, and you can look at the Zeiger, and we have +3, +4, minus 3, -4, and this is the depth. So let's say minus 3.
But this is not something that I'll be able to do on my own. Not without the tool.
Without the tool, yeah, exactly.
So I do often replace the main seal on cars.
And input shaft seal.
Yeah, it's quite common. And so what I do there is, before I remove the nut, I take a chisel and I mark the nut up against the shaft, and I just put it back in the exact same spot.
This is the way it's done.
So yeah, that is the way to do it then.
This is the way it's done, and it's unfortunately very often not done this way. And often, if it's not correctly tightened too far, the diff bearings fail 1,000 kilometers later.
Oh,
they
wow.
start to make noises. So the first kilometers, of course, it
fine,
still works, but then it starts like this, and then it goes quickly. And this is
you diff. So what I always do, I take a chisel and mark both at the same time.
That's the way you should do it. Or
a marker, yeah.
For example, when I'm doing it here, I'm often doing it like this. Or with a white color, and then you just look for a perfect.
So I need torquing to put it back exactly where it was.
And now there's -3, and before I said -3, so it's perfectly.
Oh, so you can actually see it. Yeah, film this.
This -3 is what when the gear set is built, they put every single gear set, and the gear set is always a set. You can't switch rings and pinions even in the same ratio. It's a set, and they put it on the testing facility and move it back and forth quickly and look when the wear pattern is perfect. And then a guy with handwriting engraves the correct depths of this one. There's still a few hundreds of a millimeter, so if it would have been -1 or so, it's still okay. The shims are only available in 0.02 millimeter steps, so 1 or 2 or 3 hundredths is still okay, but this one is perfectly where it should be. So as I will wash everything and so on, the color is not such a good idea as this one, and I'm doing this as a rough orientation, because with new bearings this can then be slightly different. Because I mounted with new bearings, measure the friction, dynamic friction value with this tool.
So this is when you turn the diff, so the resistance, I guess.
Exactly, the resistance of the clutches, like this. This is very high now, it's out of the range of this one. Then I measure the depth, then I remove everything, then I put the crush sleeve in the last step. When everything's right, I again disassemble it, put the crush sleeve on, and then I tighten it bit by bit and measure and tighten and measure. And then when the value is like I want it, then I stop. And when you then, in some years, but I guess you won't need, because I use different shaft seal that shouldn't leak, but if you then have to do the mark again and screw it and open it and tighten it exactly to that position. Even seems to be quite okay, only dry dust, but no oil, yeah. And now I'm doing this on the press, because hammering on it is not a good idea due to the thread here. I'm also seeing this often on used gear sets.
Really?
Press is mandatory here, is daily usage.
So yeah, as much as I love doing stuff myself, and this is the point where you need the skill, the knowledge, and the tools.
Yeah.
it is.
Here it is.
More bearings. Yeah, I mean that casing.
This is the crush sleeve. The problem with the nut, another problem is if you tighten it too far and you see, oh, it was too far, and you go back the other direction, you compress this further and then you go back. And this crush sleeve is to get, whenever you hit the gas or lift the gas, there's a certain amount of push on the bearings, and to get the stress off the bearings, this crush sleeve helps because it's without play, of course. And if you tighten too far and then go back, it has play, and then the bearings get the pushes even harder.
Then you messed up.
Yeah. Take out these ones.
So.
Again, here you can do it on the press, of course, but it's technically there's no problem to just do it like this, and it's quicker. Yeah. And here's the shim. And this is the shim where I set the pinion depth.
So this is what you can change.
Exactly. So what I will do then is reuse the old shim because it's just there and it was not so bad in this combination. And then I put everything together without the crush sleeve, without the shaft seal, and then I measure again. And then I measure, let's say, +2. And then I have to remove everything again, including the race, to get this shim. And then I need a 0.05 of a millimeter thicker one. So I go to this place and measure a 0.05 millimeter thicker one, remove this and put this in.
Very nice. So until you find the perfect spot.
Exactly.
Again, not something that I can do on my own.
Yeah, I get asked if one can do it himself, if I can just send the parts and then he can do it at his workshop. And if one asks this question, the answer is always no.
Yeah.
Because if one has a deeper knowledge, he knows that he needs the tools and the setup shims, and he knows he don't have them.
Yep.
And if one does have them, he don't ask.
Yeah.
You know?
He already knows, yeah.
That's it. And now it's the plain case with nothing inside anymore.
So yeah, from this point on it's cleaning in assembly.
Yeah, what I also still have to do is removing the bearing here. Sometimes you also have to go to a turning machine and make the place for
the tool.
For the tool, yeah, but in this case it might work without. Oh, we're lucky.
Nice.
That was an easy one, yeah.
I really like the organization and how everything is efficient, you know.
Believe me, when I'm alone here and working concentrated, I'm so quick in the meanwhile.
Yeah.
It's like dancing sometimes. Each step is choreographed, you know, because I'm doing the same every day. More or less.
That's so cool.
This is the plain pinion now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I guess at this point we just leave you to it.
Exactly. Now everything is disassembled. We discussed the LSD setup. You saw the bearings. I mean,
now I know
I can put all parts that I install up here. Then we can have a nice view of what you'll get and what my customers do get when they're not here, or even if they have been here. I'm doing some pictures of the parts and also of the steps when I'm building it. Yeah, and that's pretty much the package.
For my diff.
For your diff, plus the gear set and the LSD core. What I can also show you is this very special kind of stuff. This is the newest in LSD tech. This is carbon fiber, as you can see. They're glued to the steel surface. And concerning the friction coefficient, it's pretty much the same like molybdenum. So it has no performance advantage, but it has a massive advantage in NVH. So what we discussed before was tight corners and feeling the stick slip effect or the grinding of the clutches. This is more or less completely gone with these ones.
Wow.
They're used in 992 GT3, for example. They're used in F series, in G series M4. This is M4, G82.
Oh wow. So you used one.
But besides that, from the performance point of view, the molybdenum, they're available since I think the 70s or so.
And
Is still high quality part. And the point is, no one asked for carbon fiber discs. No one asked for low assembly clearance or stuff like that. You know, this is me
your experience, your knowledge. Yeah.
I love this kind of stuff, and I'm always looking for improving it even further.
Yeah.
And making it even better, or understand it even more, and this is what motivates me, and yeah.
Just learning and learning, yeah.
Yeah,
It's always...
exactly. And often it's like some customers that I'm working with since quite a while, and race teams, for example, as I said, and 2 years later they come and say, just rebuild it to be on the safe side. And I say, and how was it, and what should we improve, and should we do more lockup on power and less on coast or whatever? And mostly they say, it was good like it was, just leave it.
They don't go into so many details,
yeah.
Oh, I love that. I really do. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for the tour and for showing us everything.
So what you can see here is the backlash. That's pretty much 10 hundredths of a millimeter, and that's where it should be. This is okay, and these gear sets are made to have the perfect teeth mesh with approximately 10 hundredths of a millimeter backlash.
So now we can close it, I guess.
Yeah, I can also show the wear pattern. So we put a bit of color on some of the teeth, and then we just spin it a few times. And then we can see the wear pattern. So the color is removed where the teeth mesh, and so it's the darkest area in the middle is the contact area of the teeth. And to check if everything is correct, you make this on 3 or 4 areas of the ring gear. And if it looks like this, then it's quite fine. If it would be a brand new gear set, it would be even nicer in the middle, or a nicer area, more defined area. This one is a bit wide already, but it's a used gear set, and this is how used gear sets do look like.
So that's the cover that I spruced up, new gasket.
Yeah, everything looks perfect here.
And zinc plated bolts. Oh man, it looks so nice. Like brand new on the inside and outside as well.
And it'll also feel like brand new when driving it. Yeah. It's 8.8 screws. That's it.
So this is the paper for mine?
Exactly, with the exact LSD setup, with the final rev ratio, with the preload when measured in new condition. This will drop a bit then after you're driving it. The oil
braking period. Driving twisted road in moderate speeds for 30 miles. No hard driving with full throttle during the first 30 miles. And no changes suggested. Very cool. Well, I have to break in the engine, so... Yeah,
then it's no problem as well. The 30 miles are for the clutches inside the LSD core, so that the clutches...
bed in, so to speak.
Bed in on the outer discs, and so you shouldn't go with a burnout out
of the garage.
Out of the garage, exactly. So this is only a few miles required, and then after 600 miles, 1,000 kilometers around, you should drain the oil the first time, because the new clutches are biting quite a lot and losing a lot of material. And this is bad for the bearings, and so it should be removed then and put in new one. Gotcha. And then regular oil changes also make sense.
How often do you recommend oil changes then on a normal diff?
It pretty much depends on usage, because if you go in a straight line, for example, Autobahn, there is no wear on the clutches at all because they don't move. So if it's a long distance car, you can keep it in longer. If it's a track car or a drift car where you do a lot of corners, it makes sense to do it earlier. In general, I would say with every second engine oil change. So For a track car, like 5 to 10 track days. For a normal car, 2 years, 3 years. Yeah.
To make sure it stays in good condition.
Yeah. And then it always looks worn, the oil, because of the wear of the clutches. It's like brake dust. It sucks, but
it's normal.
If there's no brake dust on a normal brake, it's also bad because then you don't have any pad left. So as long as there is wear in the oil, you know it's still working fine. And if you remove it from time to time, the diff stays in good shape.
Do you also recommend magnetic drain plugs?
It's not a bad idea. Yeah, sure. But whatever magnetic stuff is on this plug is bad, because the wear from the clutches just looks and smells bad, but is not magnetic. So the magnetic stuff is not good. Although a certain amount of magnetic particles are also normal. But if you have like a flower, a big flower on the plug, something is bad, and this is mostly the bearings that wear then.
So I try to practice that now. It's whenever because I bought a couple of like magnetic drain plugs.
Yeah.
So I usually put it where the drain plug is, so you can collect if there is.
Yeah,
any.
exactly. It's a cheap way to get this one out and to have a controlling instrument where you can look how
if the diff is wearing well or there's excessive wear.
Coming shortly.
Well, thank you so much for your work.
You're very welcome.
Really happy.
Looking forward on your feedback.
Yeah.
Especially on a new, fresh and higher locking LSD, which is a big improvement on a front engine rear drive car. And yeah, looking forward on your feedback.
Fantastic. Well, I'm gonna be back soon again with my E46 M3 diff. So we gotta get that Visco crap out.
Yeah.
And then we gotta do a proper mechanical one.
Yeah.
And then I think eventually I need to do the same with the M3 and the M5 because they're also the same.
I'm here, and I will be happy to build you a lot of more good diffs.
Thank you. So I'll leave. I know you have already way too much work, but I'll leave your info in the description so you can get even more work.
Yeah. Okay. I try my best to handle everything.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Great. Thanks
so
a lot.
much.